Hello, friends. Welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with lugubrious layabout Chris Prunty and our special guest, Daniel Quinn. Daniel?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. We were originally going to have an episode all about the wilds of the world of 1,000 gods, but with our special guest here, we're actually going to let him take the reins and explain the concept that he wants to introduce into today's podcast. Daniel, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, so my background is actually in science fiction. I actually don't read a ton of fantasy, but I do love fantasy. Played lots of RPGs, but science fiction is my thing. So I thought, well, what kind of elements can we take from science fiction and bring into fantasy to enhance it? And I think, honestly, like these elements are used in all of fiction and writing.
There's just certain universal truths and universal things that work in any kind of fiction. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Exist for a reason.
And these work well in science fiction, but I think they're going to work really well in your world. So the topic that I'm looking at is wonder and the sense of wonder that you get from entering a particular world. And so in science fiction, one of the genre bending aspects that we deal with is in the Dying Earth genre. Where
that's Jack Vance, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So this is like where D&D essentially comes from. And in the Dying Earth genre, you have a setting that feels medieval, but it's actually set in the far future when the sun itself is on the verge of death. So you've got this big bloated sun. And you end up with a state of wonder because you're encountering things that have certain qualities.
A sense of familiarity.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that come from science fiction that inspires a sense of wonder in a setting are called BDOs, or big dumb objects. Mm-hmm. And we've seen them in lots of different movies. So for example, in 2001, probably the most famous BDO is the monolith, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. The question is, what can we use? How can we take the BDO and put it into fantasy? And then what can we get out of it? Since it has certain qualities that are really useful.
Okay. So essentially what we're trying to extract here is, let's take something that is really prevalent in a science fiction setting and create some kind of a hook or some kind of a staple that we can then insert into the land of 1,000 gods and go from there. And what do BDOs, what do big dumb objects tend to do? Like what's their purpose in a sci-fi setting or in like fiction in general?
Yeah, so a BDO is one way I think in sci-fi that you can engender a sense of wonder. Right. Mm-hmm. So BDOs tend to have certain set of qualities that I've noticed, when you think of different ones in different contexts. There's about 5 qualities, I'd say. So BDOs usually really rare. There might be one of them that you encounter. So, for example, in Larry Niven's Ringworld, there's that ancient civilization that he encounters, which is a big, giant megastructure. And there's only one of it that he encounters. Possibly in the past, there may have been more. They're usually mysterious, so we don't understand their origins or how they function. They tend to introduce a sense of danger, and that exploring them could be a problem for the characters or the setting. This one's a little tricky, but they are also alienating. So,
yeah, you're going to have to explain that one a little bit more.
So, like, alienation is like the sense you get where, you're in a place you're supposed to belong, and suddenly you don't feel like you belong. So it makes the familiar unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like looking at a mirror and suddenly you don't recognize your face. So there's something about a BDO that when you encounter it, there's something familiar about it, but at the same time, it makes you feel like, you're not part of that anymore.
Okay.
And usually that feeling results in a revelation. So in science fiction, we have that happen a lot, like say in cyberpunk, where you've got like technology embedded in your body that makes your body suddenly alien to itself.
Right, and that's the revelation. That's kind of like the greater societal aha moment that we have while reading it, is the connectivity between ourselves, our bodies, and society, and the relationship between technology, that kind of thing.
Exactly. I think you had a good example before with the movie Alien, right? Mm-hmm. So like, you've got this creepy biological gestating monstrosity crawling about the strip. And really the alienation there probably has to do with Ripley, who, is a mother. And right. She's a motherly figure, right? And so she's kind of like dealing with a situation where her own qualities of being a woman are being turned against her, and manifested in this monstrous way.
And then there's this moment of kind of self-reflection for her where she understands what it means to be like a powerful figure and what it means to be, in a lot of sense, like there's the perverse mother in the computer, right? And then there's the perverse mother in the alien itself, the gestation period and everything like that. And then you have the spectrum, so to speak. And that's kind of the revelation that we, the audience and the viewers, experience, right?
Yeah. So it's an uncomfortable process, like alienation, but it ends up in something cool.
But what it ends up doing ultimately is creating a revelatory sense within the fiction, right?
Yeah, and the last piece I feel that BDOs offer is they're usually impossible, and by that I mean like they break some fundamental rule about the world, and so being rule breakers in that way makes them really interesting.
Cool.
And that's it. I say those are the main qualities. Probably more, but that's what I'm thinking.
All right.
One of the things that I'm curious about, is it going to be something that was on the world, or is it something that appears to come from another world or another place? Could
be either.
Is it something that's embedded or something that's like a graph? Because both are interesting, but
No, it could be either. Yeah, it could be either.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to find out today. So what we're hoping to do today is we're going to create our own big dumb object for you here today. And we're going to follow the 5 kind of guidelines that Daniel's given to us. We're going to make one that is rare, mysterious, dangerous, alienating, and it's some kind of a rule breaker. So we're going to figure out some kind of BDO in our world. And I think we have a couple of interesting examples already. Like I think that the never-ending ritual to the time god is actually a pretty good example of some kind of a BDO. Like it is revelatory in the sense of what is exposed in the world, and it is a genuine sense of wonder. I think that's actually a really excellent way to start and kind of go from there. But I'd like to do something, because when you're talking about this, when you're talking about integrating sci-fi elements, my brain immediately goes to Numenera, which is the Monty Cook setting, where I think it's like 10 billion years into the future, and there's been 8 civilizations, and every one has had this kind of deep effect on the world, to the point where there are now, I think they're called like red sandstorms or something like that, and they're essentially sandstorm-looking things that are essentially nanobots, and they strip not everything, whatever passes through them. And I think there's a sense of mystery and a sense of intrigue that is really interesting about these big dumb objects that we can really instill. And honestly, like this kind of stuff is what's really fun. Yeah. So like this is part of what I love about world building in general. So let's go ahead and make our own big dumb object here. Do we have any places we want to start?
I have one place that I would like to start. I think it should be somewhere in the ocean or somewhere out to sea, because I feel like we've done a lot of land-based things, and to get us back to doing the Age of Sail and everything, I want something that is interesting in the ocean.
Okay.
But also not going to Dagon, because I really feel like that's super easy to do.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid it's going to happen.
Yeah, I feel like doing something like Cthulhu-esque is kind of played out, especially when it comes to oceanic stuff.
And
right?
also, big dumb objects, all we would need is like, oh, there's a monolith in the middle of the ocean that...
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Right. Okay, so it's not going to be... So why don't we do this? Why don't we name some other big dumb objects that are prevalent in fiction, and kind of figure out, and maybe we can kind of retrofit or kind of strip parts from that aspect and go from there. Yeah. I think one that you mentioned earlier was from Annihilation, the movie and the book, the Shimmer, which I think is really great. I think something like that is kind of fascinating.
Like it's dangerous, it's alienating, it breaks rules.
Certainly is revelatory. Oh, it breaks all the rules.
Breaks all the rules.
Yeah.
Pylons on Cadia in 40K. For some reason, it can stem the tide of chaos. It makes it a place of strategic value and everything, but no one knows how they work. And when they tried to make how it would work, shit got weird.
Dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very dangerous.
Well, granted, it destroyed the planet.
There you go.
Kind of yes and no. It wasn't destroyed by the planet. That's too nerdy. Go.
Okay, so we're going with so we're not doing Cthulhu. We're not doing just because honestly, the first thing that came into my mind was like a world spike, something that is driven through like the entirety of the world, and I mean, in the ocean, of course, that's where you can find it, right? But I'm not really sure if that's what we want to do. Oh, another kind of big dumb object that we had in mind, or at least one that we've kind of created already, was in Hondasa, when there was that item, it was like an orb or something like that. It was just a mysterious object that they found underground, and it was from a material that didn't match anything that was nearby and stuff like that. I think that's the kind of stuff. But I want this to be kind of a world, like it is.
Everyone knows of this.
Everyone knows about it, and it's a big deal. I want it to be something that's really earth shattering, so to speak.
I mean, it's like, when you look at the dark, like a lot of the art for, say, the Dark Tower series, or even the poem, it's based on, you see the Dark Tower itself, and just the image of the Dark Tower tells you something about the wonder in this story.
Right.
Like it's something so immense and scary, and yet you want to go to it. That's the feeling you want. Wonder.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's the kind of thing. Okay, so we're not doing a spike. I was thinking now that I'm really starting to kind of think about it. Is it perhaps now that I'm thinking is it maybe like a cyst or maybe an eye? I'm thinking of just like a big glass orb or like a semi-sphere or something like that.
In the earth.
That is, it's immovable. It doesn't do anything. But then again, what's the point of it? Because that's the other thing that we have to consider as well, is that we want this to be mysterious and we want it to be interesting, but what about it makes it interesting, right? Because we want it to be it can't just be some kind of stationary, it's just like a weird substance that just sits in the ocean. It has to do something, right? That's the other problem that we're kind of facing here. And here's the disclaimer, you may have not figured this out. We're not as smart as the guys who wrote these things that we're talking about. We're hoping that we can kind of scrape at glory here, stand on each other's shoulders, and maybe get to just a fraction of it. So with that caveat out of the way, where else can we go with this?
I mean, I like what you said about like the surface of the orb. How does it interact with people? It makes me think of the movie Sphere. Where I think the way that the sphere worked is whoever could see their reflection in it, it gave them some special power. So that's like a personal connection to the object. So the question is like, how do you interact with this thing that you guys are inventing?
That could actually be a personal revelation to the person itself, or it's
literal self-reflection.
Yeah. And some people go mad from it. Some people can accept it.
Okay, if we're talking about rule breakers.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the fact that this could be its own source of divine energy in a way? So in our current setting, right? Everyone needs a god in order to tap into magic. That's or everyone needs a divine source. This thing, whatever it may be, maybe it's mobile, maybe it's like a mirage
where it appears.
Right, where it's kind of like a mysterious, like you walk on there and some people, like you said, Chris, go crazy, they can't handle it. But those who leave this, semi-sphere or island or whatever it may be, they come back with powers akin to a God-pacted person with no anathema, with no dogma, and they are their own God at that point.
Is this how God started? Blah, blah, blah.
Right, exactly. And that's the mystery aspect of it.
I would like it to play on the infinite planes of things.
The multiverse thing that we have going,
And I think if someone were to see that spread out in front of them, it would cause a kind of madness, but it would also cause some brilliance.
That's actually really fascinating. I just thought of a really crazy fucking idea. Maybe it's not just a revelation or a self-reflection. Maybe this is like a nexus point where multiple versions of yourself all fuse together into like what is essentially a paragon of yourself. The
knowledge, the experience,
right?
Past and future, because isn't in this setting their afterlife moves across multiple universes, right. So it could be their future and past selves,
all
lives.
At the same time. Yeah. Like you're essentially. Oh, I can't believe I'm about to make this dumbass reference. You're Jet Li from The One.
Oh, I remember that movie. Oh my god, that's such a bad movie. It's so good though.
It's terrible.
So good.
It's terrible, but I think that
I want to watch it.
No. Yeah, let's watch it after the podcast. No, but the concept of it, right, where it's like you're essentially fusing every aspect of yourself, and again, incredibly rare. And maybe this version of yourself isn't able to do it. Maybe every version of yourself is doing it all at the same time or something like that.
Oh, in every universe?
In every
Oh,
universe.
man.
It like requires perfect synchronicity and anything, like even one person fucking it up can
won't
just,
work.
that's it, right? So obviously now we're going to have this thing where it's incredibly rare.
To get away from the sphere thing, I don't know if you might remember the comic, because I believe you lent it to me, gave it to me, or I bought it on your recommendation. It was the one where they had this weird blade-like thing that showed the tapestry of all the universes, and it was depicted as like a shard of breaking glass in the comic.
That wasn't me, but that sounds dope as fuck.
And rather than it being a sphere, it's something that no matter which way you look at it, it still looks 2D, and it's just a plane of glass that looks like it's breaking, and what you're seeing is every instance of yourself. Every
Fractalized.
Yeah.
and
Oh, that's perfect.
it's maddening to look at.
I love that. I like that you're getting away from the trope of the sphere, because it's like the geometric objects we've seen a lot, like especially in Cthulhu, these bizarre like shapes. But the idea of like a flat fractalized like plane, that's neat. That's neat.
Yeah.
Oh, and it could make it even harder to see because
You might miss it.
because you're only seeing it from one specific side. Yeah, okay. All right.
so
all right.
people traveling are just like, that's weird.
Right.
For a moment, I could have sworn I saw
Oh
something.
man, that's actually really fascinating. So we can literally call it something like the world shard or the time shard or something like that, where you only see it at a certain angle.
Yeah.
That's
And they
actually
all have to
shard of
look.
existence.
In
Shard
all
of
of those
existence.
universes, they have to look too.
We got to be careful because shards, when you say it like that, it sounds very close to shart. I'm just trying to avoid
Shards
that.
of existence.
Yeah.
It also works. It's what
Yes.
the gods call it. Fucking shards of existence.
Shards
It's always
of-
fucking up shit.
Okay. All right. So I love this idea, especially with so how does it move? Because now I'm trying to think of, I don't want it to be in just one place, right?
Yeah.
Because I want it to be something that is, you essentially stumble upon it, right? It's a once in a lifetime or infinite lifetime opportunity. Yeah. So, I mean, this thing is already fairly mysterious. Like, why does it exist? How does it move around? So I think that we kind of tick the box there. The rarity of it, I think that, again, as I was saying, once in a lifetime opportunity, the fact that you cannot find this thing, like even those who have walked away from the world shard and come back to it, it's not there anymore. It's almost like a trick of the mind, or it's some kind of
Trick of the light flash.
yeah
On the
so
horizon that you see.
almost like a glitch in the matrix kind of thing, where it's like, this is it, what happened, and I think leaving it kind of like, okay, we have it mysterious, cool, leave it that way. I don't want to know where it comes from. I don't care to know. I find it more interesting as kind of like this unknowable thing. Like, why does it exist? It's a literal piece of eternity, whatever it is. It's dangerous because you can, okay, hold on. In terms of danger, right? Getting to it should be fairly dangerous. It's in the middle of the sea. I'm sure that there's some kind of danger wrought with that alone. But moreover, you have the possibility of wiping out every existence of yourself in every eternity and every universe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's dangerous. What else can we do to make the surrounding area more dangerous? Like, what's happening to the area around it?
Is it shimmer-like in the sense of what the environment around is like? Is it causing things to happen?
I was thinking it could, but it's the fact that not only maybe is it displaying things from the other timelines, different realities, but imagine the effect of the world, the ocean, of having currents, temperatures, storms, everything that is affecting on several different levels. Even if it's a small amount, it's the fact that whirlpools would form, tornadoes would form. The weather system in the area is completely unpredictable, and people have generally avoided it because it's like, yeah.
Okay, so realistically, this thing takes on the form of a storm in a lot of ways. So that would explain why people ignore it or avoid it and whatnot. I can also see it like summoning, or not summoning, but just essentially being like some weird nexus point where there are these amalgam creatures, kind of similar to the shimmering, where it's not necessarily just, like a bear and a human, but maybe it's like 3 different types of sharks that like just don't come out quite right. And so you're seeing like this really awful kind of monstrosity.
It's things that slipped in between the cracks.
Something like that. Or actually we can even add something like that where it's literally
Lumineers, what is the name of that? Where the people are in the airplane flying over the world that's been...
Langoliers.
Langoliers.
Oh, yeah.
Those
That-
fucking...
Yeah, sure. Where they're essentially like parasites on
existence.
On existence, right.
Because it's a mixture of the same creature from multiple universes. So who knows,
Right.
what it's become when it's unified.
I'm just imagining just like several heads of teeth that are all spread wide where it's like
Mixed evolution.
right. Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. And not only that, but like just imagine just a full 360 of teeth because that's just how it formed in this particular version. And of course it doesn't make sense. It's hurting your brain to look at.
It is in constant pain existing that way.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe you too can become that.
I mean, that's a good question about
I
motivation.
believe there would be certain things that are humanoid that not only went insane, but maybe it's just like, oh no, C-34A didn't show up. Fuck, now I have a hand out of my head.
Right. This one was a coward. Like why'd you have to be a coward, man? What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was thinking like that brings up good questions about motivations of people who want to interact with this thing, right? So it's like, if you're a villain, maybe you think you can gain some power by unifying all of yourselves. If you're like some philosopher, maybe you think you gain some insight by going and meeting with all of yourselves as one. So like, what does it give back to you?
I feel like part of me wants it to be like there is a siren call that it kind of emits, right?
There's been this emptiness inside of me my entire life.
Oh, I love that.
Where even like cowardly people, they look at this thing and they feel this powerful pull. So yeah, I think I what I find really fascinating is like there's like even cowards are drawn to this thing. There's some unknowable like I don't know. It's like a seduction or like there's some kind of a you just can't help but feel drawn to it.
I've dreamed of this place
Forever. Yeah. And the thing, I don't think that people know that it's like the nexus where all of your people kind of meet or all of your selves meet. I actually think that they don't know. They just want to go there. They can't explain it.
I like the mysterious nature of it that maybe some madman who almost formed his complete self like wrote down of it, and then someone who was just like, I know this. I felt this. I need to find it.
That's the Necronomicon. That is literally H.P. Lovecraft's The Mad Arab or whatever his name is.
I want that.
Narlatep?
Exactly.
No,
But not Dagon.
No.
He's
the Arab.
from Dagon.
I can't remember his name right now.
It's the one
like,
who tried to find Narlatep.
It's like exactly. Yeah.
Nemhotep? No.
Yeah.
Nyarlathotep or
Bless you.
I hate you. Because whatever. Okay. So the alienating aspect, I think that's also a fairly easy pull as well, because now we have this thing where you come back from it and you are essentially a deity. You are essentially a god. And okay, so this is the other thing. This thing is obviously insanely rare, and to have someone come back from it is even rarer. And to have someone come back from it on this particular plane is rarer still, right? And the alienating aspect that I was getting at, literally no one and nothing, except, and perhaps not even the gods themselves, can understand what this existence is like. And so my question now becomes, what does the alienating aspect of feeling so apart and so ascendant, what does that do? What does it do for us as an audience?
Well, I mean, one of the basic things that's happening when you're looking at multiple versions of yourself is you're encountering what you could have been. So, what if when you got angry and you fought with your wife, you actually killed her? There is a universe where you did that.
Of course.
And now you've subsumed that person into yourself. So
And
what
you
does
have
that
to
mean
accept
for
that
you?
person.
You have to
Oh,
accept
man.
that other version of yourself, that you're capable of that.
So
That's the alienation.
That's really fascinating, because now you have these people, these beings, because can you really call them people at this point, who are walking around. I can imagine one just wandering for eons, just trying
Contemplating it.
contemplating and consolidating and understanding what's going on with themselves, and just being like coming to terms.
Am I a god? Am I greater than
Am I a
God?
monster? Like, yeah.
Exactly. And then eventually you sit down and you realize that you're both. and not. So I think that's also, I think that actually really helps for me as an audience member, right, to kind of explore this idea. Is it allows you to understand, to grapple with the nature of humanity, like to understand that you have duplicitous feelings within yourself and to what it's like to live with that. All right, so we've got the alienating aspect. We've explored what it means. We've got the final one, or the final rule that we're kind of getting into, which is ironically a rule breaker. And and again, another obvious thing where this is no longer or this object or this thing, this shard of reality is no longer, or rather, gods are no longer the only source of magic. This thing, for whatever reason and however it happens, is what brings out some. Again, I want to keep the mysterious nature kind of like questioning what the fuck exactly and how exactly this happens. But this is where magic now comes from, is this thing. And so, that, again, obvious rule breaker there.
Does that mean that the people that are transformed are like the setting's versions of sorcerers?
Perhaps, or maybe they're just living magic.
Or living
Conduits.
Yeah, conduits.
magical constructs.
Yeah.
You know, like...
They're rare
know.
enough that I feel like they can be whatever you want.
Sure.
Yeah, I
And
think
the power
that,
scale can be
Random.
exactly. And not only that, but I think that what we should do now that we've kind of broken down the 5 major points, is why don't we just try and create one? Like right now. Like, who is this person now? I mean, obviously, you can have it so there is the big bad evil guy. I think that's the obvious choice, right? Where this person comes in and is, you know, like, hey, I've come back from this thing and it has a goal and it's going to achieve that goal and I have all the magic, so what's to stop me? Alternatively, we could also go with it's a world warden, where it kind of tries to manipulate things as it sees fit, and to kind of tie in with the apotheosis, or the god blob as we used to call it. I mean, you can have, maybe that's what's going to stop the apotheosis. Maybe this is the white blood cell to the virus that is the apotheosis, where there's this team of reality splitting conduits. You're essentially creating the Avengers, like a multi-universal Avengers team, and then they're coming together. I actually think that that's kind of interesting.
I mean, like, the way it functions, it makes sense, because the god blob is essentially like absorbing potential future places to ascend to, right? Is that essentially what it's doing?
I mean, it essentially just it forces divine coalescence with the gods on its planet,
In those ways.
and then once there's no longer a planet, it just leaks over into the next universe.
Whereas
So it
this
has
one's doing the opposite. It's almost like bringing things that could be devoured to itself and then merging them into one. But I guess there is an inherent danger, because now you've taken all of those versions of that thing and put it in one place.
And you're also kind of shattering reality in each of the other multiverses as well.
Because if the god blob gets to that person, now it's absorbed all those universes' versions of that person.
But that person's not technically divine.
Oh, right, because they're not a god. That's
So
right.
there's-
Yeah.
Guys, there is so much. There is so much here that we can do. Like, I'm now thinking, like, well, fuck.
What if they're god pacted?
Right. Like, what do you
Chances
mean?
are one part of them is.
Yeah.
No, that's what I mean. Like, it's not what if. It's like
Yeah.
there's
It
obviously
would be.
going to be infinite numbers of you.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you're all of the god pacts at once.
And all the gods come with it? That's
And,
another
and
question
like,
mark.
what personality comes to the forefront?
I feel like their personality might be a little bit like Dr. Manhattan, where it's just somewhat
yeah.
detached.
Yeah.
It was just like, I can see,
molecules.
and also through all planes of existence, I have experienced this already.
Totally.
Yeah. Or a Gandalf, like the being that Gandalf is, like those, what are they called? Istari?
Maiar?
It's out there, like whatever the angel
Chris
like
would
being
know.
they are in Lord of the
If
Rings.
anyone here would
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Chris would know.
Yeah, yeah.
Isatars would be the wizard of what they were. Maiar
Yes,
was the
that's
right.
what I mean. Yeah, so like that angel-like creature is essentially what it's like.
Yes.
Yeah. So here we go. We've got a Lord of the Rings scholar.
Oh, boy, do we.
Do you remember that time that I started doing the dance before you had put on the image?
Yes, I did. I played
The dance?
the Tom Bombadil song.
And I started going.
And he
like
started
this.
doing the-
You
he
know the
started doing-
Bombadil dance? Oh, it's your god.
No,
Yeah.
and then he brought up the image, same exact dance I was doing.
Exact same
God.
dance. It's burned into his DNA.
I mean, I appreciate it. I took a Lord of the Rings seminar in undergrad,
So like I'm into it, but I am by no means know anything.
I did in my English class, I did it about World War One and Tolkien, about
perfect.
like how it was inspired and
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, all the goblin, the orcs, and
his hatred of war and how
Yeah.
war destroys land. We can go into
my God,
Lord
different
of the
story.
Rings as much as you want.
Yes.
I'm
Sorry,
I
It's
thought,
a
we,
great piece of
I thought this
fiction.
podcast
Yeah.
was about world building, not Lord of the
We're
Rings.
off track.
Lord of the Rings. How did he build it? Tune in next time.
where are the wonders in Lord of the Rings?
The what?
Now Doom, sort of.
I would imagine the artifacts of Sauron are probably
Yeah,
big
the
dumb
rings.
objects, right? But again, this is not a Lord of the Rings
Sure, yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Let's get back to our very cool idea that is actually really cool.
Actually cooler, I think.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of spark off some ideas and plots that I'm kind of tossing around in my head, because now again, instead of playing as someone who's God pacted, like if you're going to be playing this as an RPG setting, or if you're going to be writing stories about this type of world, it is no longer just about the God pacted. It is about being a conduit. It's about being this being. And, if everyone, or if, again, I can see it as two ways, right? If everyone, like, you can either play a game or write a story about the God pacted people, because they're already movers and shakers in their own world. But then you can also do a story where it's all about the conduits and the people. Also, there's so much here. There's such a deep vein that we can mine for beautiful stories. What happens if there's two? What happens if there's two of them? And now you're like world-shattering powers coming
How
together.
many are there, even?
How many are there?
I would like to where a cynic gets the conduit, gets there, and is just like divinity is a joke. And just,
Right, pure nihilist.
Yes.
Yeah. Again,
Doesn't
there is so much. It's such a great idea. I can't. I mean, like, fucking pat ourselves on the backs. Like, that's really cool. I think. Come on. Yeah.
We can thank Jack Vance.
I will never thank Jack Vance. Actually, you know what? Jack Vance is fine. When you brought that up, by the way,
yeah.
I have
Cringe.
to say, because I'm not a fan of like so far into the future that it's medieval. I think that it's
I like that.
no, I think it can be really hokey. Like, for example, one of the worst books I've read, and it had this trope.
I want to read that.
I hate it. It's called The Prince of Thorns.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's like a trilogy. And it's like, there's like, oh, you're on the Lich's Highway, and people are like named regular ass names, but like one letter off.
I have a good one for you. That's the opposite. So it's from the Book of the Long Sun. And so the first one's called The Shadow of the Torturer. And it's set in a medieval world where the character, the main guy, he's got it right there, Shadow and Claw.
I'm literally pointing at it in my bookshelf
so
as we speak.
so you know exactly what I'm talking about. You got Severian, the Torturer, and you realize as you read it, because he uses a lot of old Roman language, Latin terms, essentially, to name things, that it's actually set far in the future, like the remnants of the future.
Right.
That's doing an example of doing it properly.
Yes. Although,
It's been done well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it hasn't been done well. I'm
Can
just
go
saying
wrong.
when it's done poorly, like in Prince of Thorns, I just hate it so much. Like, I
Still
really just...
reading it, and I once again forget the author's name, but Stormlight Archives. Do you know
Is
what you're talking
that
about.
Brandon Sanderson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about the armor and the weapons in it seem like it's the future, but it's also the past because it's sword and plate is what people use.
You know, I still haven't read any of Brandon Sanderson stuff. I've it's been on my list for the longest time, and I know he's supposed to be a really fantastic writer. I just haven't touched any of his stuff yet.
I haven't read it either.
So you
like-
can't call me out on anything.
Yeah, but our listeners can.
Not that I have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is not your D&D group where you can just blatantly steal from other people and then like pass it off as your own.
Whoa. They never asked me.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Chris, I'm reading through your campaign notes. This sounds really familiar compared to, all the games that I've run for you. That's really weird.
It's an homage.
Yeah.
That's how all writing works.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, exactly. This is not Bastige. This is Festige.
Oh, come on. There's
Vestige.
nothing that...
No, there's nothing that egregious. But anyway,
The jungles of Ritesh are completely original.
Oh my god, you son of a...
You suck a dick. I was writing about Ritesh before the...
You absolutely were... Well, yeah, because I told you about it when I was workshopping it with you.
I don't know if that's true, and
That's
my
very
memory
true.
does not work enough to tell me whether or not I stole it.
You stole it. Well, you should
Allegedly.
also... Yeah, no, you stole it.
Legend.
All right.
You can edit that out, damn it.
I sure can. And I will, in fact. All right, so I feel like we've come to a head with this idea. We've created what I think is actually a really fascinating BDO. I think that it evokes all of the things that we're looking for. I think that if anything, I haven't been this excited for something like this in a long time. Like I think that that's not true. But
Since last episode.
yeah, since my wedding.
This is the proudest day of my life. You have 2 children and were married recently. I know what I said.
I don't have children.
I also do like the idea of people like possibly going by it and just being
Just
like,
missing
"Whoa, I just
it."
saw like 20,000
Just
ships."
miss it.
What was that?
Just like missing their destiny entirely.
Yeah.
Like there's a
my
thousand
God.
sad stories.
Did you ever see the Star Trek episode where it has like the million, just like, we just received 1,175 hails from 1,120
Enterprises?
Enterprises.
Yes, that was amazing. Yeah, I was gonna mention a BDO from Star Trek, the one from Voyage Home, the probe.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a BDO.
Yeah.
What are you up to?
Wasn't that the
John?
Voyager probe?
Yeah, it was the Voyager probe. Yeah. No, it was. Is that the one with the whales? The one with the whales. Is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think it was.
the same. Yeah, was it?
It like evolved, became a supercomputer.
Event. Yeah. Well, there's that one too.
Why does God need a starship?
Exactly. There's one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Star Trek has a lot of videos.
Oh, I think that we should add in as a general disclaimer when we use BDO, we're using it as in a very broad sense, not in the, I think as Daniel said, sci-fi grognard specific term.
Yes.
But again, I feel very excited about this concept. I don't know where else we can go from here. I think it's a great starting point, and I think that it's going to be. I don't know. I think there's just so much about it that we can get into.
In the wilds of the ocean, I really would like creatures that kind of float in between the cracks as being like leviathans or something to that effect.
I mean, if you want to talk about Golden Age of Sail, I mean, something like that, like maybe also if you want to, yeah, exactly. Not just that, but imagine like, okay, well, why haven't they explored? This is why they haven't explored.
I was watching a documentary on the Golden Age of Sail and everything, and one of the things that we haven't touched on is piracy.
Ooh, that's a good episode.
Because piracy and also the legalized piracy of where privateers and everything were used, and the trade companies of like the East Indian Company.
No, I've mentioned stuff like that. So if we're going to be doing that, I do want to mention that in the Wilds episode, which is going to happen next time. Well, unless we get another special guest. This has been actually Daniel. I want to say thank you so much for coming on. And do you have anything to plug in the meantime?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you because it's been a huge fun. Like, I've never really done a podcast. So, for one, I'm terrified as to how I might sound. But for two, like, I just forgot that we were on a podcast, which I think is great.
I think that's
So
a huge
thanks.
compliment.
That's usually what happens with me and why I go away from the mic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's all the
in
drugs we
moment.
took beforehand, but I think it's great.
Thank you.
And in terms of plugging, so I finished a sci-fi book, so I'm trying to get it out there, and it's called The Fixer.
The Fixer.
Yes.
Okay. So we can expect this in store shelves, 2021?
2024, maybe, if I'm lucky. Depending on how the publishing industry works.
Okay.
No, just release it on Amazon.
I could do that.
Can't that one person who's been famous for like pounded in the butt by my own butt kind of thing?
Well, you're self-published like Chuck Tingle.
not to. I mean,
Media,
if you
media
want to grab
and literature.
on to Chung Ting.
I think I'll write some other furry material for that, like
Yeah.
for
Okay.
Amazon.
Go on.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Are we sitting with the Dr. Chuck Tingle right now?
I can neither confirm or deny.
All right. So again, Daniel, thank you so much for coming and sitting in with us on this very special episode. I think that you've brought an amazing aspect to the podcast, and I'd love to have you on again at some point. I think that'd be really great. And if you have any questions for Daniel, like if you want to sign him and give him a book deal, you can go ahead and reach me, and then I'll get in contact with him.
Very minor finder's fee.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. I mean, yeah. But you can do that by emailing us at worldbuildwithus@gmail.com. And I've been Rob Hilferty here with Chris Prunty and Daniel Quinn. Thank you very much for listening, and we love you, and we'll see you next week.
And don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell.